Let's look at managing another important risk, the construction risk, the risk that the building works do not go according to plan. Let's start again by looking at the context, why managing construction risks is important in a project. We saw earlier that we need revenues to pay for the financing of the project investments. We also saw that we only start to earn revenues after the development phase and the construction phase have been completed. Until that moment, our project asset, say a power plant, cannot start operation. As the development and construction phases progress, the project expenditure increases, often exponentially. Millions of dollars have often been spent by the time the project asset is ready, and the worst that can happen is that the construction is interrupted for a long time. So we cannot start operations, or only start much later. Imagine that the project building works are stopped due to technical difficulties. That's even worse than not closing a financing at all, because the sunk costs after substantial construction would be much, much higher. At the same time, as projects get larger and more complex, the challenges the construction faces are ever bigger and ever more diverse. The sister course to this course, Dealing with Project Complexity, offers measures that you can take to handle such complexity. But unfortunately, however good that course is, having taken and passed it will probably not be enough to convince the lenders. Project lenders will want assurance that the construction will result in the expected end product, a project asset that opens on the scheduled date and that will operate according to the expected standards. As before, we need to convince them of this before they will part with their funding. We'll need to show the lenders that we have managed the construction process well and are confident that it can be completed successfully. Stop the video a moment and think how, as a project manager, you could organize the project to mitigate the construction risk. Did you find a solution? Let's look at this more closely now. We will need to allocate this risk, this construction risk, away from the project company for the financing to succeed. If we don't do that, the lenders will have to assess and accept this risk, which they probably won't do. The project finance is, as we concluded before, a risk distribution system. But to whom can the project company allocate this risk? We said that in project finance we try to allocate the risk to the party that is best able to assess and manage that risk. A construction firm is generally best able to assess and manage a construction risk. Construction is, after all, their expertise and their core business. So we should try to sign a contract that makes the contractor responsible for the whole construction process. We could do that by providing in that contract that the construction firm needs to deliver us the agreed constructed asset, say a power plant, at the agreed date and for a fixed pre-agreed price. We call these turnkey contracts because the constructed asset is delivered ready to turn the key and it will fire up and start operations. Often such contracts are also referred to as EPC contracts, highlighting that they integrate the engineering, procurement and construction of an asset. One contract party covers the whole process from the beginning right up to the end, from early design to completion. After signing such an agreement, the construction firm, of course, needs to be able to deliver on its promises. That requires it to be experienced and qualified to carry out the works. It also needs to have the financial resources to do so, even if unexpected events should happen. Events that could lead to higher costs that the contractor cannot on-charge to the project company because of the fixed price that we agreed. That is why only experienced and financially sound construction companies are usually able to participate in project financings. There's one more measure we can put in place to make the construction company even more committed to deliver on its contractual obligations. We can make the construction company an equity investor in the project company. Remember that the equity investor is the one who bears the project risks and who benefits if the project goes according to plan. If the construction company finds a cheaper or quicker way to realize the project, it will benefit through an increase in the value of its equity. If, on the other hand, it causes delays or seeks to charge a higher price, its equity value will drop. Through its equity stake, the construction company is naturally motivated to do its best and satisfy its obligations. This way, we have aligned the interests of the construction company, the SPV, the project financiers and all the other stakeholders. In practice, the construction company is often a project sponsor, the party that designs, develops the project and is also the equity investor in it, or at least one of the equity investors. Now we know why that is often the case. If we structure the project in this way, the project lenders can be confident that the construction works will be well managed, will have a maximum chance of succeeding, and that there will be a project asset that can generate the anticipated revenues. Now that we've optimized the construction of the project assets, there's one more step that we need to put in place. It will be imperative that these assets remain in operating condition for a long time to keep the expected revenues coming in. That means that their operation and maintenance, often referred to as O&M, needs to be professionally done. Again, we'll need to convince the project lenders that we have managed that process well. We optimize this by contracting the responsibility for this to an experienced and again financially sound contractor. This O&M contract needs to run at least as long as the project loans are outstanding. That reduces the lender's risks. In O&M contracts, we usually define minimum operating standards, for example, a minimum number of operating hours or minimum operating efficiency of say 95% or more. If the O&M contractor neglects its responsibility, the contract will make it liable for penalties to cover the loss for the project company. Sometimes the construction contractor and the O&M contractor are the same. This has the benefit that the responsibility for solid construction and the O&M are in the same hands. That gives the joint contractor an interest in optimizing the design and construction for minimum operating costs. We call that minimizing the life cycle costs of a project asset. And it also makes it clear who's responsible if something goes wrong. There can no longer be any finger pointing between the constructor and the operator on who's to blame for a certain event. The structure we described creates the ideal that we try to work towards when we optimize for project financing. In practice, it may not always be possible to achieve this exactly, but even implementing elements of such a structure will help to support the project financing, reduce the risk for the project funders, and thereby reduce the funding costs. Thanks all for watching.